Welcome to Karma's Payback, where betrayal ends and revenge begins.
In the shimmering heart of New York's financial district, power wasn't just spoken, it was whispered. Every smile hid a calculation, every handshake a contract in disguise. And for 12 long years, Clara Reynolds had mastered the art of being invisible. She wasn't the loudest in the room, never was. While others chased promotions and applause, she quietly built the foundations of Vanguard Equity Partners. One spreadsheet, one late-night revision, one carefully worded clause at a time. They called her the assistant. But behind those calm brown eyes was a mind sharper than any contract the firm had ever drafted. Her boss, Ethan Price, loved control. Charming in public, ruthless in private. He built his empire on charisma, deals, and manipulation. But Clara, she built it on details. The kind people ignored until they cost millions. For years, she made him look perfect. He took credit for her strategy memos, her compliance reports, her forecasts. Each time, he smiled that signature smile and said, "Great work, team." But Clara wasn't on that team. She was the quiet storm waiting for the right wind to rise. It all began the day Vanguard announced their merger with a European firm, Leviton Holdings. A deal worth $500 million. Cameras flashed, champagne flowed, and Ethan Price became the face of success. Clara sat in the back of the ballroom, clapping softly. No one noticed that she had written the legal framework that made the merger possible. No one noticed that she had inserted a tiny, almost poetic clause buried under 12 pages of legal language. A clause that required, in the event of corporate restructuring, a complete audit of all asset movements in the prior 5 years, overseen by the original financial officer of record. That officer? Clara Reynolds. No one saw it. Not the lawyers, not the board, not even Ethan Price. And Clara didn't need them to. She only needed time. Months passed. The merger made headlines. Ethan Price graced magazines, giving interviews about leadership and vision. He hosted galas, made appearances, and promised his staff new beginnings. For Clara, that beginning came in a different form, a termination letter. "You've been a great asset, Clara," he said smoothly, "but Leviton has their own compliance team. You understand." She understood perfectly. He smiled. She smiled back. And then she left quietly, with a company laptop, her files, and a memory sharper than glass. People like Ethan believed silence meant weakness. But silence was Clara's most dangerous weapon. For 6 months, she vanished. No LinkedIn updates, no calls, no news. Ethan forgot her name by the time his penthouse renovation began. Until the letter arrived. Not from Clara, but from the Office of International Corporate Oversight. An audit, triggered by a structural anomaly found in the Leviton-Vanguard merger. Ethan laughed it off, at first. But as the auditors began asking questions, the kind only one person could answer, his confidence began to tremble. Who authorized the European asset transfer? Where's the compliance log for Q3, year 3? Who signed the due diligence waiver? And each document pointed to one name. Clara Reynolds, financial officer of record. She had the digital keys, the encryption passcodes, the notarized copies, all perfectly documented, all legally binding. He tried to overwrite it, but every attempt looped back to the same clause. Original officer authorization required. Clara had built a system even he couldn't charm his way through. He tried to reach her, at first politely, Then desperately. Emails, calls, even flowers. Nothing. Until one morning he found her sitting in the cafe across from Vanguard's new office. Same calm smile, same notebook, same silence. "Clara," he said, forcing a grin, "we should talk." "We are," she replied softly. Her voice was even, measured, lethal. "You built this clause to trap me," he accused. "No. I built it to protect my work." He leaned closer. "What do you want?" Clara opened her notebook. Page after page of evidence. Transfers, forged sign-offs, offshore payments, all tied back to him. "I want nothing. But justice tends to find its way to the surface." She stood up and left. No threats, no demands. Just that quiet certainty that terrifies men like Ethan Price. Days later, news broke. Vanguard Equity Partners under investigation for fraudulent reporting. Investors fled. The merger froze. The board called for emergency restructuring. And in a twist of poetic justice, the auditors reinstated Clara Reynolds as head of financial compliance. Temporarily, they said, to help untangle the mess. She didn't smile when she walked back into the glass tower she once built. But the silence that followed her was deafening. Weeks turned into months. Ethan's confidence dissolved under pressure. His charm couldn't save him this time. Every hidden deal, every inflated report, all came crashing down, one line item at a time. In the boardroom where he once mocked her, Clara now sat at the head of the table. Ethan tried to speak, to explain, to reclaim dignity. "You planned this," he said bitterly. "No," Clara replied. "You just didn't read the fine print." The board voted unanimously to remove him. Effective immediately. He left the building in silence, just like she had 1 year before. Only now, the silence belonged to her. When the press asked Clara for comment, she declined interviews. She didn't crave fame or revenge headlines. Her satisfaction came from knowing she'd restored balance, not through vengeance, but through precision. Late one night, she stood by the window of her new corner office, watching the city hum beneath her. Power doesn't always roar, she thought. Sometimes it whispers. Her phone buzzed, a message from an unknown number. It read, "You played the long game well." No name, no number, just the message. She looked out again, calm, unshaken, because Clara Reynolds didn't need validation. She had something rarer, control. Months later, Vanguard stabilized under her leadership. She rebuilt the company, quietly, efficiently, turning chaos into order. Employees who once ignored her now spoke her name with respect. But there was one final act she hadn't planned: the board's unanimous decision to make her managing director. It wasn't just a promotion, it was poetic justice. And as she stood at the podium that day, speaking to hundreds of employees, she didn't talk about revenge. She talked about discipline, patience, and truth. In a world that rewards noise, she said, remember that silence, when used wisely, can move mountains. The room fell quiet, not out of fear, out of awe. Because everyone in that room knew, behind every powerful man who thought he ran the world, there was someone like Clara, watching, waiting, and building her moment. When she left the stage, she didn't look back. She didn't need to. Her story wasn't about applause. It was about timing. The art of silence had given her everything she'd ever lost and more. In a world obsessed with shouting, power, she whispered it. and won.